welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by Adam Meakin, Arwin trying to join in the intro, as he does every single day. We've also got Neil, John, Brian, 10th Man, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome, one and all.
Afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Morning, morning.
Good
Friday.
morning.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
Friday, or if you're watching it live, it's Friday. And if you're watching it on a re-up, it's probably Sunday. But meanwhile, any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curvature?
Not even on Friday.
Friday make a difference?
Nope. It's being relevant to at the moment.
Excellent.
It's too big. The ball's too big.
Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
That 15 degree that the sun is doing, yes, but not the Earth.
Nope.
Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
It's over there. Whatever it is. Or it at least appears to be over there.
Nope.
That's better, Arwin, isn't it? It appears to be over there.
It's true, though.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
No, there's no hypothesis ever put forth for gravity, not by Isaac Newton, not by Henry Cavendish, not by Charles Vernon Boys, not by Albert Einstein, not by anybody.
So, Brian, this was in the pre-show. So that's why they had to make it mathematical and conceptual, because they can't prove mass attracting mass.
Well, they can't prove mass or is bending space-time these days. You know, before they couldn't prove mass attracting mass. Now they can't prove mass is bending space-time, but they can't prove space-time or space. You know, the next thing they're going to be trying to do is trying to get out of not having to prove what a graviton is. That's their next port call.
Right, but in mathematics, it's just the equation. If they get the equation to work out, they look at that as proof, but that's all conceptual. It's not real.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole world is mathematical, isn't it? The whole of the globe model is mathematical. Everything connected to it is maths. It has to be, because they can't physicalize any of it. They can't prove it, and they can't physicalize it. The only part of the globe model that has any relevance is buoyancy. That's only because it's the only actual physical thing they can kind of show in reality. But their explanation for that involves gravity. So.
But any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Can I come back
We're
to the
not
previous
done yet with
question,
gravity, Nathan.
We've got lots of excited people. Who wants to go first? I had Adam first. Go on, Adam.
Just to go back to the previous question, I think it might be a time for a tweaking of the question, because any scientific evidence of gravity requires us now to ask further. I think we should ask for clarity of that we're only prepared to accept scientific evidence for Einsteinian gravity, and we're no longer prepared to accept a 105-year-old out of date Newtonian. There's none for either, but I do think we should clarify we're no longer prepared to accept 105-year out of date stuff.
To be fair,
Yeah, but
this
that
was discussed.
105-year out-of-date stuff is also not proven.
Hold on, that was just yes. This was drawn a line under 2 months ago, and it was discussed while you were here, Adam. We said we'll draw a line under this. No more 106-year out of date Cavendish, CV Boys, Reverend John Michel, Newtonian in quotes gravity. None of it will even be entertained anymore. And since then, don't get me wrong, there was one occasion where someone managed to weasel it in and it did get argued about. But there we go. That was with a newbie, somebody who'd not been, their mate had sent them in.
It's all retro, man. It's all retro. They just want to go back to Newton. Weren't they trying to work out this new version of gravity where it's Newtonian again and Einsteinian at the same time or something? At least in the math.
Yeah, sorry. We're requiring scientific evidence either way, Aaron. So let's just get back on track, right? Regardless of what they're claiming and how they're claiming it. If their new hotness is some new hotness that involves a juxtaposition between pseudo 4 space and 3 space, then fine, let's see it and let's see if it's got scientific validity to it. But on the other hand, I'm with Adam, right? They'll have to present the new hotness rather than the 106-year out of date Cavendish, CV Boys, Reverend John Michel, incorrectly identified as Newtonian gravity. We're just not going to accept that because there is no scientific validity. It's not even their current science, in quotes.
Yeah, they're trying to mathematicalize kind of a 3.5 space version of gravity as opposed to a 3 space or 4 space. Any changing of the mathematics, of any changing at all of any what Rumpus and them call reducing of Einstein's field equations. As soon as you change any of his equations, then they're yours. They're not his. He didn't put them forward. If I paint a mustache on the Mona Lisa, can I still claim it's Leonardo da Vinci's or whoever painted it?
It's how he would have painted it, though, right, Brian? It's how he would have done it.
Yeah. No, I'm with Adam, definitely.
Yeah, I totally agree. Adam, you're right. We drew a line in the sand and then we've kind of forgotten about our little line.
I'll give you your correction as well, though, Nathan. That's subtly done. So 106 years, I stand corrected, yeah. It's 21.
Yes. It's 106 years out of date. But there we go. Moving on. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
Nope. Against natural law.
Absolutely not.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
So you're answering the question with the presupposed spherical Earth. So the answer is no. It's presupposed.
Well, okay, fair enough.
One.
Go on, whoever that was.
No, Black's debunked the notion of a spherical Earth.
Well, you're not leading me very well for my next question, are you? Any evidence of the R value?
Can I go back to the question again? I'm like lagging today. I was going to say, we do have some evidence in that we have a magnetic field, but to how we could then attribute that to something that couldn't produce a magnetic field is interesting.
I can do it with the way they'd do it if you want. Do you want me to affirm the consequent for you?
Oh, go on then.
Okay, if the Earth is a sphere with a molten iron core that's self-perpetuating, then we will experience magnetic fields. We experience magnetic fields. Do you not agree? Are we all in agreement? We all agree we experience magnetic fields on Earth. Therefore, the Earth's a sphere.
Shit. You formulated that so well, I may have to change my worldview.
So it's if P, then Q, Q, therefore P. If I eat 100 hamburgers, I am very full. I am very full, therefore I ate 100 hamburgers, even though I'm actually full of 10 pints of lager. And that's why I'm very full. In other words, the assumption of the former doesn't necessarily prove the latter. So if P then Q, well, it doesn't necessarily follow that Q therefore P. You know, I am full, therefore I ate 100 hamburgers. Well, in this instance, if the Earth has a self-perpetuating molten iron core, that's your presupposition P statement, then we will have magnetic fields. Now, their Q statement is typically a true statement, like star rotation or magnetic fields or something that you can actually observe, because then you take the actual observation, that would be to affirm the consequent, if P, magnetic fields, therefore Q, Earth with a self-perpetuating molten iron core. So if P, then Q, Q, therefore P. If Earth a sphere, then magnetic fields, therefore Earth a sphere. Affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy with the begging the question thrown in for good measure.
Well, and a law of contradiction, because this is the point. Even if you go within that and you gave them that you attributed it to the molten iron core, the scientific knowledge, the factual knowledge we have about molten iron cores is they can't produce this field. So to me, there's a law of contradiction there, because you're saying the thing that's causing it is something that we can demonstrate can't cause it.
Just didn't listen carefully enough. I love being a glober. No, I said if Earth a sphere with a self-perpetuating molten iron core, and if you're going to correctly identify the fallacy, it'd be special pleading. So get your fallacy identification correct.
Yeah, I missed the caveat. If
Yeah, obviously I assume Earth a sphere, and obviously I assume molten iron core at the centre of it, and obviously I assume that contradiction in your vernacular is self-perpetuating. Therefore, how can it be a contradiction if it's perpetuating itself? Obviously, like I stated it does, when I assume that it does, and it's at the centre of a sphere, giving us the magnetic fields that we actually experience, and we do experience them. Therefore, all that nonsense I just made up is all true.
See, there's the lesson. Never give a ball or anything. Don't. You'll just get mugged with it.
I'm more and more thinking it's human nature. The whys and wherefores of why people can so quickly get into the role of like trench level baller, even if they're not one, they instantly become one and have all the tactics. I think it's human nature, and it's been played on by the narrative programming. In other words, when we say, "Oh, that's baller behaviour," it's like, no, it isn't. The amount of times I have the exact same obfuscation, double speak, rumpusing from my own side when it's something that they don't want me to be challenging them on.
I think I have a challenge for the Curie point from a baller's perspective.
Okay, go ahead then. We're going to move to Brian. I think that was the last housekeeping question. So go ahead, John, then we'll move to Brian.
Since heat and pressure are tied together, it would be impossible for us to perform a scientific experiment with the pressures that the core experience.
What core would that be? The core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth now?
Of course.
And why would we be presupposing it and then trying to violate it or prove it either way when we've just assumed it in the first instance? Yeah,
so it's got to be true.
No, it's got to be true. No, I'm not a baller anymore. I'm not on your side in this scenario. No, not therefore true. Therefore true because you made it up yourself?
Well, formal logical fallacies are okay if it's not a formal debate.
So what you're saying is, if I formulate a formal logical fallacy, but we're having an informal discussion, then therefore it's no longer a formal logical fallacy. Well, that makes perfect sense.
Well, it's an informal logical fallacy.
No such thing as an informal logical fallacy.
Well, there was right there out of John's mouth.
The reason it's called formal is because of the form it takes. And its form is if P then Q, Q therefore P. That is the form of the formal logical fallacy. Affirming the consequent being the title of the fallacy. The description of it being if P then Q, Q therefore P.
Have we not had that one as a from a baller? I'm sure that was tongue in cheek that we've been fed that. This is not a formal conversation, therefore it can't be a formal. I'm sure that rings a bell.
Human nature, like I'm trying to argue, right? There's no ballers here. I'm sure there are on the Discord server, they're just being very quiet. Or maybe there isn't, I don't know. Either way, I think it's just human nature, and some of the way we've been programmed into our fundamentalist zealotry about a ball utilises some of that when it comes to a defence mechanism put out to somebody who challenges it. I don't know how, I haven't figured it out yet, but it just seems like, given that both sides do it in the same exact way, that it's not a baller trait. It's a people trait.
Well, that's because when you're growing up and you're, how can I put it? You see the ball all the time and you see them always giving these arguments against the ball. Then when you come to a flat earther and he asks you a question, like one of the housekeeping questions, you're going against all of that, and you're going to commit a fallacy just because you're defending all this programming, but you don't even know you're doing it until, if you're patient enough, someone explains, hey, that was a presupposition. You never proved that point. P then Q. And so they never stay long enough to do it, because the human nature is, there's no way this guy is wrong against all my teaching. So there's the human condition. Instead of being critical and discerning of the actual argument and the words being spoken at that moment, it goes back to all that pre-programming.
Has anybody got anything else to add on this? If not, we're going to go to Brian. Okay, so
Just to say that it's the logic that is misformed. That's the point.
yeah, a logical fallacy is a flaw in logic, correct?
I got something.
Go ahead. Do you want to, while we're waiting, Brian,
hold
on, Neil. Hold on, Neil. Hold on, Neil.
A word.
Hold on, Brian. Just while we're having this back and forth, do you want to share your screen and get it prepared and everything? Go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, okay.
I just want to know if mathematicalize is a word and physicalize is a word.
I don't know. I'd have to look it up. Have you not got Google? Physicalize? I don't know. What was the other one?
Mathematicalize. He just wants to realize.
I mean, when describing that fallacy, it's the fallacy of misplaced concretism. So to make something which is abstract concrete. So it doesn't say to physicalize it. So I don't know. I'd have to look it up, Brian. Neil, sorry. I don't know.
Physicalize sounds like it's bringing the physical, or bringing conceptual into physical world.
Well, that's to reify. That's what that is. That's called reification. The fallacy.
You did say.
Go on.
You did say, playing along with that question, you said misplaced concretism.
Yeah.
I know. It flowed with physicalize and mathematical.
Well, that's how they describe it within the fallacy. When you reify something, the map is not the terrain. Well, that's the fallacy of misplaced concretism. It's to make the map, or in the case of the globe Earth argument, the heliocentric model, actually the world you're living in. Well, that's to make it concrete. Okie dokie. Right, I've got you up on screen, Brian. Do you want to do your thing? Go on to whatever page. Make sure you're not on mute.
Yeah. I'll do that now. I shouldn't only take a couple of minutes. I should take. Okay. I'm going to start with the definition of the Coriolis effect and give a little bit of history on it. Then I'll move on to the second part. Okay. What is the Coriolis effect? The Coriolis effect is a visual effect that is observed from the rotating non-inertial reference frame by an observer looking up into the stationary inertial reference frame at an object either stationary or moving in a linear path that appears to be deviating from stationary or straight, making a perceived curved path. This is purely a visual effect that does not have measurements and calculations. It does not create weather systems. It has no connection to a person's latitude or pendulums. It is not something that airline pilots need to account for, nor is it a force or something that is observed from the stationary inertial reference frame. It is only observed from the rotating non-inertial reference frame. So if the Earth was rotating, we would be observing this visual effect all the time, but that never happens at the end. The reason I read this out is this is the original and the actual definition and description of the Coriolis effect. There isn't any other one. This is the real one. This can be shown and replicated and demonstrated over and over and over again. This is all it is, just a visual effect. But some decades ago, it was pointed out, because this was the number one proof of Earth rotation for a long time. But some decades ago, it was pointed out that this is not observed. So mainstream science, instead of actually just accepting that maybe there might be geocentric, that we might be geocentric, they couldn't leave go of heliocentricity. They were too engrossed in it and too long in the tooth in it. So what they did was they had to convolute the conservation of angular momentum. So what they did was this. We get a lot of claims from both sides, not claims, but a lot of argument from the both sides concerning the Coriolis effect. That's because the actual Coriolis effect is an apparent deviation, but their version of it, it becomes an actual deviation. So I'm going to show you exactly what they actually believe. The mainstream science, they needed to have the world spin. And so what they did was they decided that, let's say this is the equator region here, that if you make a straight line here, from here straight up here to, from South America up to the eastern United States, what they did was they decided that we would be conserving the momentum of the globe's rotation at the equator region, but when you go up here, you will actually land in the ocean as opposed to land in the eastern United States, because the rotational speed is different up here at, let's say, 40 degrees north or 30 degrees north, whichever. And that actual deviation, let's say you're in a plane or whatever, that actual deviation that you would encounter in that belief is the Coriolis effect according to the both sides. So the Coriolis effect is actually an apparent deviation, but they have this convoluted version of the conservation of angular momentum, and due to what they basically did was they took the conservation of angular momentum, they mutated it, and what they did is they made it the conservation of miles per hour momentum, right? And so by doing that, that allowed them to claim that an airplane could travel from South America to the eastern United States in a straight line, but what would happen is that by the time it reaches the eastern United States from the northern South America, is that because the two rotational speeds would be different, that the plane or whatever would be conserving the momentum of 1,040 miles an hour at the equator, but up at the eastern United States, let's say Florida or whatever, it's not in their model, it's not rotating at that rate. But they are calculating everything in miles per hour. But that is not the conservation of angular momentum. As right here at the equator and up here and down there, it's all moving at the same angular rate, because angular speed is measured basically in revolutions and radians. It's not measured in miles per hour. So up here or down there on a rotating body, whether it be on a sphere that's rotating or on a flat disk that's rotating, doesn't matter what part of it you're on, you can walk in a straight line in or out from the center out to the outside or back in a straight line, and you will always be moving at the same angular rate. So they are completely convoluting the conservation of angular momentum as a kind of a weaselly way to make some kind of a calculated actual deviation and calling that the Coriolis effect. But it is not the Coriolis effect. The Coriolis effect is an apparent deviation, not an actual deviation. And the conservation of angular momentum is going to be the same regardless. Once you're at the same exact line, no matter what part you're standing on of that rotating body, you're still moving at the same angular rate, the same angular speed. There isn't a difference between the equator on a globe and 30 or 40 degrees north or south. You're moving at the same angular rate. If you were to use miles per hour, you're talking about a distance around at that latitude, at that particular point, a distance around the rotating object, in a distance to travel. It has nothing to do with angular speed. Your angular speed is exactly the same, regardless of where you stand or where you stand or sit or whatever on a rotating body. If you're moving in a straight line from here down South America up to the United States, then if you're conserving the angular momentum of this rotating body, then your angular momentum will be exactly the same all the way up. It won't change. And this is what they've done. They've convoluted they've convoluted and mutated angular momentum. Sorry, Nathan, you're saying something?
No, I didn't say anything, but I will once you're done.
Yeah. Okay. Just give me a moment there. Okay. So what they've done is they've made a mutation of the conservation of angular momentum. They've turned it into the conservation of miles per hour momentum, and they've taken what was an apparent deviation, which is the Coriolis effect, and they've made it into an actual deviation calculated through their conservation of miles per hour momentum. So they're 100% wrong. This is not the conservation of angular momentum. And moreover, the conservation of angular momentum is not a continual thing. So you won't continue to conserve it. You will conserve the angular momentum or linear momentum momentarily, but it's only momentarily. You will not continue to conserve, if you leave this reference frame of a spinning body, you will not continue and move in a straight line towards the center or north of it or whatever. You will not continue to conserve that momentum. That does not happen. The conservation of momentum, whether it be linear or angular, is a momentary thing and not a continual thing. That's the end of the
A couple of quick questions then for you, Brian.
Sorry, presentation.
Yeah, no, a couple of questions before you say you finished. So, with Coriolis effect, when you say you, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would be on the ground moving with a non-inertial spinning reference frame, correct?
Yes.
And the description of Coriolis effect is only describable from your vantage point, viewing it as you rotate underneath stuff, correct?
Yes, exactly.
So it is only relevant to you and your observation of something, correct?
Yes.
Now, the thing you're observing, does that have any effect based on your observation of it? Is your observation of the thing in Coriolis deviation, are you in any way affecting it by observing it?
No.
So, in other words, the effect you're observing in Coriolis is of something not changing its actual path, but seeming to because you're rotating underneath, correct?
Correct.
So therefore, what they're doing, by your explanation, is taking something that's a visual effect observed as you spin underneath stuff, and describing how much something in the air will actually drift, physically, when Coriolis is not actual drift. Appearing to drift, but not actually drifting, is Coriolis, and they're saying, well, it's going to retain velocity. Well, what's it? If it's Coriolis, it's you on the ground rotating underneath, not you in the plane accounting for anything. That's not Coriolis.
No, it's not.
Okay.
No.
So they're taking, they're substituting Coriolis effect for conservation of angular momentum, and the way they're doing it is taking an observation that you make from the ground and turning it into an observation from the projectile's point of view. When Coriolis isn't about the projectile's point of view, it's about you rotating underneath.
One correction on this.
Just one second, Adam. Go ahead, Brian.
Just
go ahead.
1 second. Wait, one correction. It's not the conservation of angular momentum they're using. It's the conservation of miles per hour momentum.
Yeah. Let me,
which is
Brian, can I?
Sorry, Adam. Yes.
Yeah, just so I can. Very well done. This appears to be what the ballers are unable to articulate when you challenge them on it. So my understanding, and it's clarified by what you've just said with terms of angular momentum and angular speed, is they take the concept of the angular momentum and the preservation of it, convert it into a miles per hour lateral movement, irrespective of the 500 miles, so at the equator it's 1,000 miles, and then suggest that Coriolis is the differential difference of the lateral, the sideways speed, the east to west speed that you maintain when you take off. So when you take off at the equator and you go north, you were traveling 500 miles an hour north and 1,000 miles an hour to the west, yeah. So everything stayed. But as you went further north, the Earth starts to spin at a different rate to you. So you're now up near Maine, and you're now traveling 500 miles an hour north, but you're also going 250 miles an hour west at the same time in their mathematics, for their mathematics to work, because the only way the Coriolis applies is the differential difference.
Stop. No. That's not the way the Coriolis applies, because
no, I'm not saying. I'm saying this is their convoluted mathematics of how they're trying to then place this differential imaginary speed traveling sideways. Yeah, how that differential that you maintain at 1,000 all the way changes in respect, and it's that calculation they're doing. But it's the reality of that is that when you get to Maine, you're going 500 mile an hour north and 250 mile an hour west.
Correct, but as the projectile. So as the projectile, well, you're not observing Coriolis effect, because Coriolis is only observed as you rotate underneath stuff. So it's only ever you observing the plane seeming to do something it isn't, because you're rotating underneath it. That's Coriolis effect. So as soon as you start detailing what the projectile does, then you're no longer detailing what you observe of it as you turn underneath, which is Coriolis. So you observing it seem to drift from the ground as you turn underneath it on a roundabout, for example. So you're on a roundabout, you look up in the sky and you see an aeroplane. And you go, what do you know? It looks like it's going round and around and around. And someone goes, no, that's actually you spinning on the roundabout. The plane's unaffected by you observing it seem to drift because you're turning underneath it. That's Coriolis. You turning underneath, watching something with a path or otherwise seeming to do something it isn't. As soon as you start saying, well, but in the plane, what's actually happening in terms of Coriolis? Well, nothing, because you can only detail it from the spinning reference frame. They want to take an observation that's only possible from a spinning reference frame and detail what the projectile's doing. Well, no, it's about what the projectile seems to do as you turn underneath it, not what it actually does. What it actually does is irrelevant.
It's worse, Nathan. They're adding another force. So if we go back to the roundabout, what they're saying is when you throw the ball to the person on the other side of the roundabout, what's actually happening is the ball is not going in a straight path. It's continuing on the curved path of rotation as well as the straight path. And the reason we see the curve is that the circumferential speed on the outside of the roundabout when you throw it gets faster, and the circumference becomes shorter as you get to the middle and then as it goes out the other side. And it's those changes in the rotational speed that actually cause an actual real difference. It's not an apparent movement. It is an actual real thing caused by this additional sideways motion they're putting in.
Yes, I get it, but that has one severe problem. The problem with that is a true description of how a puck would travel across the rotating reference frame when attached to it with, say, a very low friction rate. Well, then your attached circumference would have that apply, would it not? Yes, you don't have to agree, it's rhetorical.
Yeah.
The only problem with this example is that doesn't occur once you leave the non-inertial spinning reference frame. It's no longer got any drag.
Well, it's that pretending of sideways. That's what it's worse than just misrepresenting. It's adding in something else to try and then mathematically pretend that is the Coriolis, which is, like I said, the reality of the pretense is the plane's going when it gets to Maine, it's going sideways.
Perfect.
Sorry.
I just want to make the summary, Brian, and then I'll let you make the final summary. So, in summary, Coriolis effect is observed from the ground as you spin. So think of yourself on a roundabout. That's how you'll be observing Coriolis deflection of anything. It doesn't matter if the thing's concrete into the ground and seeming to spin or flying through the air and seeming to spin. It's actually you spinning underneath. So it's the effect of you spinning underneath. You've got to be underneath, attached to something spinning, watching something not spin. That's Coriolis, just for clarity. Furthermore, as soon as the globe head opponent starts describing the path of the projectile and how the projectile would perceive things, or deviate, or not deviate, then you're no longer describing Coriolis. Because I'll say it again, Coriolis is your observation as you spin, not the projectile and what it actually does. It's what you perceive it to do. So in the case of a lamppost concreted into the ground, as you spin underneath it, it seems to come towards you and then go away, and then come towards you. Even though it's not moving an inch, it's concreted into the ground. It's merely you turning underneath it. That's Coriolis. As soon as you start detailing the path of the lamppost, as a Cumvirus tried to do yesterday, well, it doesn't have a path. Yeah, it's a not actual deviation if it's Coriolis. The seeming path of the lamppost. Obviously, it doesn't have one, which is why I use it for an example. But the same principle is applied to a globe Earth if they claim it turns underneath stuff to give us Coriolis. It doesn't, so they have to take it to the projectile and qualify why it doesn't drift from the ground. Why Earth isn't turning underneath it, and if it was to be turning underneath it, how it would affect the projectile, and therefore how the projectile would compensate for it. All baloney, because it's only observed as you turn underneath. Go ahead, Brian, you can have the last word on this, and then we'll hopefully get some other opinions.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Okay, I'll sum it up. When it was pointed out to mainstream science that we don't see the apparent deviation that we should see if we're on a rotating body, whether we don't see the apparent deviation of objects moving linear or stationary above us in the sky, then what they did was they mutated the conservation of angular momentum, and they created a mathematical actual deviation, calculated deviation, and called that the Coriolis effect. So essentially what they did is they not only mutated the Coriolis effect, but they mutated the conservation of angular momentum. Yes. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent, Brian. You know, I didn't ever dream that we'd get further into pulling apart how they have convoluted this, but we are definitely breaking new ground in terms of the convoluted double screw mess that is their assertion of a angular attention being retained with an actual deflection, when Coriolis is not actual deflection observed as you turn underneath stuff, as a justification for why Earth isn't turning underneath stuff. Excellent, very concise. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Thanks.
Did anybody else from maybe Discord want to add anything on this? Sorry, just bear with me, and then we'll go to Chris, because I'm assuming Chris wants
just
to add
echo
something.
your compliments there, Brian. That was excellent, concise, and really well explained. And to me,
thanks, Adam. Thanks
the
a lot.
exact detail, mate. Yeah, that shows the wizard behind the screen.
Yeah, well, they're not showing. Their version of events is not the conservation of angular momentum or the Coriolis effect. It's a mutation of the two of them, and it's none of it can be demonstrated. So we can actually demonstrate the conservation of angular momentum all day, every day, and it won't be anything like they say.
Right.
Do you agree with the point though that when it's a mathematical flim-flam, but when you try and comprehend what they're saying is actually happening, do you agree with the point about the plane speeds? To get that thing, the plane has to have an additional. It has to be traveling 1,000 miles an hour sideways, doesn't it, as well, when it takes off at the equator? Because that's the mass they use, so that it's still traveling 1,000 miles sideways, but the Earth's now only moving 750. And that's what they put in to create the numbers to match the Coriolis. And that's fine mathematically, but it's laughable when you apply that to reality.
Yeah, because you have the plane flying backwards, catching up with Earth velocity when you're travelling west from the equator if you take off in that direction. So that's what QE will use as leverage when he expands out their argument. I hate doing this. I've got to be honest, both you, Brian, and Adam, as much as you've done a very good job. It pains me dearly to hear you, Adam, saying, and that's Coriolis. I know full well, without the full bevy of disclaimers that you mean their convoluted gaggle screw of nonsense that they call Coriolis when you say that. Because meanwhile, Coriolis is observed from the ground only, and it's things not actually drifting, while we describe the effect that they call Coriolis and how much the plane travels sideways when it's going north and then has to compensate for the fact that it's actually losing a bit of sideways momentum because the path of the journey has got a different miles per hour speed when they're describing this as conservation of angular momentum, 15 degrees now, that doesn't change anywhere over the surface. Yeah, it's a complete cluster screw, but it's nice that I can now concisely summarize it. Again, much appreciation to Brian and you, Adam.
It's because of one fact that they've had to put all of this in, and the simple fact that the stars are on our side is the reason is because unfortunately the Earth doesn't rotate underneath the aeroplane. That's the reason for all of this nonsense.
Yeah, it's a massive begging the question fallacy.
Precisely.
Begging the question fallacy is all it is.
If you want to keep it apart, then we have to do the same thing that we did with refraction, and that is give it a name. Well, with Coriolis effect, it's really confusing because it's not even a different thing of the same type. It's just a complete reification. So why don't we just refer to it henceforth as the Coriolis reification?
No. I think you find that this is going to be called Globiolus.
Yes.
What's
that you say? It retains angular momentum, and Coriolis effect is actually my misunderstanding about what conservation of angular momentum is. Oh, I think you mean Globiolus, don't you? Because Coriolis is observed from the ground of things not actually drifting. Look it up. But your Globiolus says that Earth has the trajectory of the projectile accounting for this sideways motion when travelling north. Oh, right, that's Globiolus. Coriolis is observed from the ground as you turn underneath stuff.
But it's not the conservation of angular momentum. This is the other trick they're pulling. It's the conservation of miles per hour momentum in a mathematical model.
Yep.
Because it's not that either. So every time we say the conservation of angular momentum to do with Globiolus, that's incorrect as well.
Perfect. Oh, I love the fact that this linguistics. I'm going to get some contributed to me. Yay!
The conservation of apparent angular motion.
No, Arwin, it's already been named.
Shush. Get Earth is spinning first.
I've named it, Arwin. Just accept it. You've got your paradox. This is mine. Get lost.
Really quick.
Mine. You've got paradoxes. Get lost. Globiolus.
I think it was going to take a little longer than that to come up with something, but respect, Nathan. Yeah, I'll give you that. Globiolus.
Oh, God, no.
Arwin's not pleased. Look, I'm naming this one, Arwin. Just accept it.
What? Naming this one? You named the last one after me against... I didn't even do that. So you named the last one.
After you? Yeah. What you're saying is, even though the last particular bit of nonsense we identified, that would be the Arwinian paradox, moving the horizon with an R value you can't measure because it comes from a physical horizon that then wouldn't be movable. Well, that Arwinian paradox, Arwin's saying, well, because you named it the Arwinian paradox, therefore you shouldn't have this one because you named the last one me. Right, Arwin?
That's right. Let me name it. Let's call it Nathonian Coriolis. How about that?
Nah, because I don't want... The whole point of this is to take the word Coriolis out of it. So Globiolus takes out the bit that's real, which is the observation of not actual deflection from a non-inertial, that would be spinning, reference frame, like a roundabout. You observing a lamppost seem to move when it doesn't. That's Coriolis. Well, as soon as you start calling, well, the projectile's going to keep up with the 750 miles, blah, 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 blah. Well, I don't want that being labelled the C word. I want that to be called Globiolus. We'll give it a G instead of a C. And insert globe, because it's their nonsense. Like this, yes, hurricanes. Here we go. This is a perfect time to talk about this. Right. Hurricanes could be used to describe Coriolis effect. How so, you say, Nathan? Surely not. Well, yes, if you were in the hurricane. Now, if you were spinning in the hurricane like you spin on a roundabout, and you looked at something on the ground, let's say you could see a car parked up, and you looked at it and go, oh, it looks like it's coming towards me. Oh, I've passed it. Oh, it's not there anymore. Oh, look, it looks like it's coming towards me. That's you turning in the hurricane. Yeah, like a cow in Twister, right? Well, for the cow in Twister, whipping around in the Twister, it sees things seeming to come towards it, and then it's not. And then it seems to come towards it again. But that's you in the hurricane. Likewise, when people talk about Coriolis effect with drain water, going swirling in a particular direction, unless you are in the drain, swirling in it like on a roundabout, watching things that from your vantage point as you swirl down a drain seem to move when they're not, then you're not describing Coriolis. Hurricanes are only applicable to Coriolis if you're in them, and drain water swirling one direction or another is only applicable to Coriolis if you're swirling around in it. So if you're in a whirlpool, for whatever reason you find yourself in a whirlpool, if you're not dead shortly after, and you observe things seeming to come towards you, oh, the bank is coming towards me. Oh, no, the bank's going away. Oh, the bank's coming to... Yeah, that's you seeming to see things move when they're not. That's Coriolis. Now, the assertion that from the ground, an Earth rotation causes this formation of weather patterns has absolutely nothing to do with Coriolis, first and foremost, and is an absurd notion that not attached, unbonded particles are going to be affected by a presuppositional Earth that spins. It's absolutely absurd and definitely isn't Coriolis. Well worth mentioning at the end of this little diatribe between us.
So Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz was definitely seeing Coriolis because she was in the hurricane.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was.
That's right. You've got to be in or on a non-inertial spinning reference frame to observe Coriolis.
How about Spiniolis?
Yeah, he won't let this go. Globiolis.
Call it globy. That's the worst. That's like flurfer. That's that level of wording.
Yeah, that was intentional. That was exactly
their naming level.
That's exactly where I got it from, Arwin. So when they name stuff like Flurfspective, right, that's kind of the thing that went through my head when I'm like Globiolis, because that's the kind of thing they do.
That's exactly what I was trying to prevent. Don't go to their level.
Well, I'm taking it a step further. Globiolis is an actual deviation effect caused by the conservation of miles per hour momentum as per your latitude within a begging the question fallacy. So that can be tweaked on.
It's a difficult word to alter anyway. I'm just thinking of the raviolis effect or something.
Yeah, you're just going to have to accept this one. Globiolis is going to be their nonsense from now on.
You're starting to sound like a sore loser here, Owen.
Sore loser? What? It's not my model.
Let it go.
No, I'm not letting it go. There has to be a better word for it.
Owen likes to play baller and he wants his words in it.
Let's take a vote. I say Globiolis stands.
This isn't a democracy. I've already named it.
Well, Chocolate's already posted it.
Hey, Nathan, can I jump in?
Say again? Was that Chris?
Can I jump in here?
Yes,
Yep.
Feel free.
So, hey, Brian. So I was listening to the show last night about this exact topic with Acum virus, which, and by the way, it was just a complete demolishing, kind of embarrassing for him. But anyway, I was thinking about it. So I'm going to lay my idea out to you all and you tell me what you think. So I'm going to need to present real quick. Make a window. Oh, it's not letting me tab. Oh, I have Paint open. It's not letting me choose Paint for some reason.
We need a bit of elevator music. Dun, 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 dun.
All right, I'll just do my whole screen.
Okay. Let me know
when
you're happy with it.
Yeah. Can you see it?
Yes. Get it all ready in.
All right. Great. Okay, so just bear with me while I kind of explain this, and then I'll ask you all the questions. So what we're told is that this brown circle thing is the Earth, the ground, right? It's spherical, and the X marks the spot. So we have a drone in the middle. We are told that as the Earth spins 15 degrees per hour, the drone also spins 15 degrees per hour and maintains its exact spot over the X. And when that occurs, we get this star trails. Does everyone agree with that on the globe model so far?
No, because the part where you assert that the drone should remain over the X is to fly in the face of assertions that snipers have bullets drifting when they leave the barrel of a gun, or that footballs drift through goalposts because Earth turns underneath them. They actually assert that the Earth would turn underneath the drone. So, no, I wouldn't accept that as globe rhetoric. I'd accept it as trench-level rhetoric that they assert in defence of why it doesn't drift. They just say, well, we wouldn't expect to see it drift, although that is actually incorrect, and their rhetoric said it would.
Okay, fair enough. So, but if the response to that is if we beg the question with them, because that has to be their response, that their response has to be that, yes, the drone is moving with the rotation of the Earth. Because if it wasn't, you wouldn't get star trails, correct?
Well, their assertion is that we'd see a Coriolis effect from the ground. Coriolis is it drifting away at 1,000 miles an hour on the equator because it's no longer attached to a non-inertial reference frame. So there's plenty of citations that say Earth has Coriolis effect.
Right. But their response is this drifts at 15 degrees per hour. It maintains its position over X on the Earth. And therefore you get star trails because the drone is, even though the drone looks like it's hovering and staying where it is, the drone is actually moving, but the stars are standing still. That's a fair assessment of their argument, right?
Sort of, because you said if it's drifting at 15 degrees an hour, then it will stay over the X. Well, no. If it's drifting at 15 degrees an hour, that would mean that from the ground it would deviate from the X. That's the 15 degrees an hour drifting from the X. So other than you asserting what they would assert, which is that this is drifting at 15 degrees an hour, it's not moving and not drifting. In other words, they'd hold simultaneously two positions that are mutually exclusive, which is to say, as you did...
No, don't. The drone drifts at 15 degrees an hour along with the surface of the Earth.
Oh, right. So the Earth drifts with the drone, so they're not drifting apart then?
Well, you talk about drift is not a term...
So they're not drifting apart, according to Rumpus, exactly as I just said they would disclaim. Both positions can't be true. It can't be both drifting apart and drifting with Earth. That's two different contradictory positions. But as demonstrated by Rumpus at perfect timing, yes, he will hold both positions as true, simultaneously, as you described accurately they would do. Chris, do you want to continue?
Sure. And Rumpus might be perfect for this because he has that globe mentality in his head. So what would I need to do to negate this effect with the drone? What could I do to negate this effect if what they say is true?
Why are you interrupting? I'm trying to give you a quick summary there. So
Oh, he was doing the presentation. He wasn't interrupting you, you stupid moron. He was doing a presentation. Was it the fact that you were talking through his entire presentation that made you think he was interrupting you?
Well, you said something and you...
Shut up! You ignorant little man. Yeah? He wasn't interrupting you, but that is your tactic here. Whilst continually interrupting a presentation, yeah, you then come off mute and say, if you could stop interrupting me. It was a presentation. You unbelievable buffoon.
You strawman the globe...
You weren't being interrupted, you complete clown. What you did, in useful nature that you have by nature, was to assert two positions simultaneously. Drone not drifting, drone having 15 degrees an hour drift. Two positions simultaneously can't be held at the same time. Feel free to express your cognitive dissonance by saying that he's interrupting you while he's doing a presentation.
What are the two positions you're claiming we have that are...
You claim that there's 15 degrees an hour turn of the Earth as the Earth turns underneath to give you an observable Coriolis deflection. That's 15 degrees an hour drift observable from the ground. You also simultaneously say that Earth and atmosphere move as one and there is no deflection. The things move together, not drifting. That's two positions simultaneously held.
No, you've got confused.
No, I'm not confused. I can succinctly, calmly summarise your abject doublespeak contradiction really easily. Not confused.
You're just strawmanning. You don't...
No, not strawmanning. It's not an argument that I'm putting forward in lieu of something else so I can burn it. No, it's my accurate summation of your doublespeak contradiction where the drone doesn't drift at 15 degrees an hour, but it simultaneously has Earth turning underneath it at 15 degrees an hour for us to observe Coriolis effect.
Understand that the Coriolis...
Yeah, you're just talking through me. End of your time here. Get lost. You're not just going to simultaneously ignore every single word and claim it's a straw man. I'm going to pull apart why you say it's a straw man, and then if you ignore me, you get lost. I'm no longer going to tolerate this nonsense here. Do you have anything to add, Chris?
Yeah, so, because I haven't gotten to the conclusion.
Chris, you're asking how would you negate the star trails happening?
Correct.
In accordance with, could you send maybe the drone to do 15 degrees an hour east to west?
That's right. If you move the drone at 15 degrees per hour this way, on their model with what Rumpus and the others are explaining, you should, in reality, physically, you should get 0 star trail movement. That's something that we could actually physically do and test.
Yes, that's correct. That's the point of QE originally presenting this. If it's tracking with it, then the star movements wouldn't be moving. Precisely. So how I had a virus over a barrel with this exact same thing yesterday. So which one's which? What's happening? You can't both have the stars moving as a result of you moving underneath it when you've detached a drone, and then they say, well, the drone's moving with Earth. Well, then why have we got star rotation? You can't hold both positions as true. Either we're turning underneath stuff, seeing things seem to drift. Now, they claim that's why we see star rotation. But that would also simultaneously mean that a drone has Earth turning underneath it at 15 degrees an hour. Now, they'll come here and say, they're moving together. Well, okay, so what's the cause of the star rotation again? And it's both positions get held. We've got 15 degrees an hour drift as we turn underneath stuff. We don't have 15 degrees an hour drift. They're moving together. Both positions held as true at the same time.
Could I just point out that that's lovely, but even to try that would require at the equator a drone that can go at 1,000 miles an hour.
Precisely. To negate the spin. Go on, John.
What I was going to say is, even if you have something traveling like the stars do over our heads, and you travel at the same speed as them, and they don't have star trails, it's still not proving the Earth is spinning.
Exactly. You'd have no difference between that and a stationary Earth. So what's proving we spin? Oh, it's supposed to be that things drift away at 15 degrees an hour. You're now justifying why it doesn't and telling us how it, when you beg the question, moves with an Earth that spins, in violation of the first law of thermodynamics, I might add. Well, when they describe that, they don't have anything to prove it's spinning anymore, because there'd be no difference between that and a stationary plane. So they're just arguing against the fact that they should have drift. They don't have drift, so they give you a scenario that'd have no difference between that and a stationary Earth, when they beg the question that Earth is moving with the atmosphere. Well, they're not moving apart then, so no drift. And round we go. And all they hope to achieve, or hope, when I say hope, I mean someone like Rumpus hopes to achieve, is abject confusion in the audience. And here we are breaking a little bit of new ground with Brian, giving clarity to how they've taken angular speed, saying it's being retained, and then giving it us in miles per hour rather than 15 degrees. It's supposed to be 15 degrees of drift anywhere, but yet we get told about speed changes and projectiles. Hold on, Coriolis is observed from the ground as we turn underneath stuff. Of course, if we saw that, we'd have things drifting because Earth was turning underneath them. It doesn't happen, so they have to justify why it doesn't happen with this convoluted mess of nonsense. And so it will go on and on and on until we bring clarity here, and then they have to give us both positions simultaneously. Anyway, I'll say with that, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.